let me call myself Her Royal Highness anymore, but I'm gonna put it all over my stationery and on the gifts that I give to my friends. While she never...
she's playing herself in a movie.
Yeah, she's which is, I guess, acting.
Yeah, look.
That we're communicating that the trophy is as much in love with me as I am with him.
Oh, that...
What if everything we've been watching wasn't the full story? Because something very strange just happened on live television. And the moment it aired, the internet practically exploded. During a fiery broadcast, Megyn Kelly didn't just criticize Meghan Markle. She went straight for the jugular. Her words? Something about this doesn't add up. 3 seconds of silence followed. The kind of silence that makes producers in the control room panic, and viewers lean closer to the screen. Within minutes, clips were everywhere, on X, TikTok, YouTube reaction channels, even late-night talk shows were suddenly dissecting every frame. But here's the twist no one expected.
She would give her eye teeth to have more work like she did in the With Megyn special.
Because according to Kelly, the controversy surrounding Megyn isn't just about one interview, or one headline, or even one public appearance.
No, she claims there's a pattern.
A pattern that keeps repeating, again and again, every time Megyn steps into the spotlight. Coincidence? Strategic timing?
Or something much more calculated?
Because once you start connecting the dots between Megyn's latest podcast appearance, a mysterious sold-out product launch, and a wave of resurfacing rumors, the whole situation begins to look very different. And trust me, the deeper this story goes, the stranger it gets.
The only reason we know who you are is because you married into the royal family. No one...
Right after that moment on live television, something unusual started happening online. Clips of Megyn Kelly pausing mid-segment and saying, "Something about this doesn't add up," began circulating at lightning speed. Within hours, the internet had turned that single sentence into a full-blown investigation. Reaction videos popped up everywhere, comment threads exploded, and suddenly everyone was asking the exact same question about Meghan Markle. What exactly isn't adding up? Because according to Kelly, the issue isn't just one interview, one podcast, or one viral moment. She suggested there might be a pattern hiding in plain sight. And once people started looking closely, they realized something strange. Every time Megyn appears in a highly emotional public moment, something else seems to happen right after. A launch, a product, a project announcement, a headline-grabbing reveal. Coincidence? Maybe.
But the timing was beginning to raise eyebrows.
Let's rewind for a second. Just days before Kelly's comments went viral, Megyn had sat down for a podcast interview with Jamie Kern-Lima. At first glance, it looked like a typical celebrity conversation. Soft lighting, calm music, two friends talking about life, struggles, and personal growth. But viewers quickly noticed something unusual about the tone.
The questions were gentle. Almost too gentle.
There were no confrontations, no pushback, and definitely no uncomfortable topics. Every answer Megyn gave was met with nods, encouragement, and praise.
To some viewers, it felt warm and supportive.
To others, it felt staged.
And that's where the debate began.
Because within hours of the podcast airing, the internet split into two camps. On one side were supporters who said the interview finally showed Megyn's authentic side, vulnerable, emotional, and open about the pressure she faces in the public eye.
On the other side were critics who weren't buying it.
They pointed out something interesting. Jamie Kern-Lima isn't just a random interviewer.
She's actually a close friend of Megyn's.
Suddenly, the entire tone of the conversation started to look different.
And somehow this segues into inspiring younger girls, which Jamie references letters that she's seen.
Commentators online began asking a simple but uncomfortable question. Was this really an interview, or more of a friendly spotlight moment designed to make Megyn look good? And then another detail caught people's attention. During the episode, Lima repeatedly mentioned that Megyn had not seen the questions beforehand. At first, that might sound like a normal clarification. But strangely, the more it was repeated, the more suspicious viewers became. Because when someone keeps insisting something is spontaneous, people sometimes start wondering if it really is.
And that's exactly what happened.
Threads on X began breaking down the interview moment by moment. Viewers replayed specific clips, analyzing body language, tone shifts, even the pauses between answers. One viral comment summed up the mood perfectly. Real interviews don't need to keep reminding you they are real.
That single line was shared thousands of times. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about the podcast anymore.
It had turned into a bigger discussion about Megyn's public image. Is she misunderstood? Or is she incredibly strategic about how she presents herself? That question alone was enough to keep the internet buzzing for days. But here's where things took an even stranger turn. Because right as the podcast was reaching peak popularity, another headline quietly slipped into the news cycle. A brand connected to Megyn had just launched a new product. And according to reports, it sold out in less than 30 minutes. At first, supporters celebrated it as a huge success story. But critics looked at the timing and immediately raised an eyebrow. The emotional podcast had gone viral, and almost immediately afterward, a product connected to Megyn was suddenly everywhere. To some observers, that sequence felt a little too perfect. And that's exactly the point Megyn Kelly was hinting at during her broadcast. Not that anything illegal had happened, but that the timing of these moments, the interviews, the headlines, the product launches, might not be random at all. According to Kelly, the real question people should be asking isn't whether Megyn is talented or controversial. The real question is much simpler. Is the spotlight following her? Or is the spotlight being carefully directed? Because right as the discussion about Meghan Markle's emotional podcast appearance was reaching peak intensity online, a new headline quietly started circulating. A lifestyle product connected to Megyn had just launched, and according to the announcement, the item sold out in less than 30 minutes. At first glance, that sounds like a massive win. Any brand would celebrate that kind of demand. Supporters immediately pointed to it as proof that Megyn's influence is stronger than ever. But the internet rarely stops at the surface. Almost instantly, people began asking the kind of questions that turn a success story into a controversy. How many units were actually available? Was the stock large, or was it intentionally limited? Because here's the thing about a sold out in minutes headline, it sounds impressive. But if the initial supply is small, the story can look very different. Marketing experts quickly jumped into the conversation, explaining that limited inventory launches are one of the oldest tricks in modern branding. The strategy is simple: release a small batch, create urgency, and once everything disappears, the buzz spreads faster than any advertisement could. Suddenly, what looked like overwhelming demand began to look carefully orchestrated. On X, threads started appearing that mapped out the timeline almost like a detective board. First, the emotional podcast interview. Then, millions of views across social media. And right at the peak of that attention, a product drop. To critics, the sequence felt a little too neat. One viral post put it bluntly. Step 1. Open up emotionally. Step 2. Capture the spotlight. Step 3. Sell something while everyone's watching. That comment alone racked up tens of thousands of likes within hours. But the debate didn't stop there. Because as the product story spread, analysts began pointing out something even more interesting about Megyn's public appearances over the past few years. The same sequence seemed to repeat itself again and again. A deeply personal interview. A wave of global headlines. And then, somewhere in the background, a project or business move appearing at exactly the right moment. Of course, supporters pushed back immediately. They argued that there's nothing unusual about promoting your work during a media moment. In fact, that's exactly how modern entertainment and branding operate. When attention is high, smart entrepreneurs use that opportunity. From that perspective, Megyn wasn't manipulating anything. She was simply playing the same media game that every celebrity plays. But critics weren't convinced. To them, the issue wasn't the promotion itself. It was the pattern. Because once people started noticing that sequence, they couldn't unsee it. And that's exactly the moment when the conversation reached Megyn Kelly. During her broadcast, Kelly leaned back in her chair, paused for a moment, and then said something that instantly sent the internet into another frenzy. She wasn't accusing Megyn of breaking any laws. She wasn't claiming there was some hidden conspiracy. But she did say one thing very clearly. Look at the timing. Look at how these moments line up. That statement hit social media like a spark in dry grass. Within minutes, reaction channels were replaying the clip. Comment sections filled up with debates, arguments, and endless speculation. Because suddenly the story wasn't just about a podcast anymore. It wasn't even about a product launch. It had turned into a much bigger question. Was Meghan Markle simply benefiting from good timing? Or had she quietly mastered the art of controlling when the spotlight turns on? And this time, it wasn't about a podcast. It wasn't about a product launch either. It was about something much more personal, and far more explosive. Because right as the debate about Meghan's timing strategy was dominating social media, Prince Harry gave an interview that instantly reignited the entire conversation. During the appearance, Harry opened up about the ongoing tension with the royal family. His tone was serious, reflective, almost heavy. He spoke about the distance between him and his relatives, the breakdown in communication, and the reality of living with family conflict under the world's brightest spotlight. For many viewers, it sounded like a vulnerable moment, but others immediately started asking a familiar question. Why now? Because the timing once again felt interesting. Just as the internet was already buzzing about Meghan's podcast, the sold-out product launch, and the comments made by Megyn Kelly, Harry's emotional interview suddenly appeared right in the middle of the storm. And when that happened, the conversation online exploded again. On X, thousands of users began connecting the dots between the couple's public appearances. Some believed it was simply coincidence, two public figures navigating complicated lives in the middle of intense media scrutiny. But critics weren't convinced. They argued that every new headline seemed to extend the same cycle. A revealing interview, a surge of attention, a fresh debate about the couple. And whether intentional or not, the result was always the same. Their names dominated the news. That's exactly the moment when another layer of controversy quietly resurfaced online. Old rumors about Meghan's alleged workplace behavior, stories from unnamed staff members and anonymous insiders, began circulating again. These reports described high-pressure environments, demanding expectations, and chaotic behind-the-scenes dynamics. To be clear, none of those claims were officially confirmed. But the fact that similar stories had appeared multiple times over the years gave critics another reason to question the image being presented publicly. Supporters of Meghan immediately pushed back. They argued that anonymous accusations should never be treated as facts. In their view, these recurring rumors only appeared whenever Meghan was already facing public scrutiny. To them, it looked less like whistleblowing and more like a coordinated pile-on. But whether people believed the rumors or not, one thing was undeniable. The conversation surrounding Meghan had grown far bigger than any single interview or headline. It had become a cultural tug-of-war. On one side were fans who saw a woman constantly fighting against unfair criticism and relentless media pressure. On the other side were skeptics who believed her public image was carefully managed, every appearance strategically timed. And sitting right in the center of that storm was the question raised by Megyn Kelly during her broadcast. Not an accusation. Not a definitive conclusion. Just a lingering thought that refused to go away. If all of these moments, the interviews, the headlines, the launches, the debates, keep happening in the same sequence, at what point does coincidence start to look like a pattern? Because whether people love Meghan Markle or criticize her, one thing has become impossible to deny. Every time her name enters the conversation, the entire internet stops scrolling and starts arguing. After everything we just walked through, the emotional podcast appearance, the perfectly timed product launch, the viral commentary from Megyn Kelly, and the sudden return of royal drama involving Prince Harry, one thing has become crystal clear. This story is far from over. Because every time Meghan Markle steps into the spotlight, the reaction is never quiet. And it's definitely never boring. Some people see a woman who has been relentlessly criticized for years, someone who refuses to disappear no matter how loud the backlash becomes. Others see something very different, a public figure who knows exactly how to command attention, turning every appearance into a headline and every headline into another wave of conversation. And maybe that's exactly why the debate around Meghan never seems to end. Because both sides are completely convinced they are right. One group believes she's been unfairly targeted by the media since the beginning. The other believes the timing of her biggest moments is simply too perfect to be accidental. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think Megyn Kelly was onto something when she said something isn't right about the timing of these events? Or do you think this is just another example of the internet turning a successful woman into the center of a controversy she never asked for? Drop your honest opinion in the comments below, because this conversation is getting more intense by the day. And if you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. Because if there's one thing history has shown us about Meghan Markle, the next headline is always just around the corner.